Understand that it's 5 o'clock. We have 30 minutes to wrap up the last session and maybe answer all the questions of the day. It'd be a nice thing to try to do. I would like to start, if we could, with there was an email that was sent today, and it's asking this question relative with this background. I am an architect and urban ecologist and have been researching and developing urban food production systems. Throughout the day, speakers have elaborated that vertical farming provides ecologically, emphasize, ecologically sustainable solutions. Many have acknowledged. However, the speakers have also acknowledged directly and indirectly that the technology-based urban production systems will require extensive capital, funding to get going and to operate for construction and energy. The question then is asked, can the panel discuss their thoughts on turning vertical urban farming schemes into truly sustainable systems, one that can economically, emphasize economics, become sustainable? In short, then, it's a very difficult question to answer, of course, but in short, if you can make it work technologically, be ecologically sound, when and how, or is it now, economically viable? If Cherry interprets, we'd love to hear from him. But in the meantime, someone, please. Devin? John Todd.
Is it? Can people hear me? Is it working?
Not yet.
No. Just a second. Give it a moment. Right, okay. Can you hear me now? A far-sighted developer that I'm working with is very willing to invest in advanced vertical farming technologies as part of a mixed-use complex system that would not cause it to rise or fail on the success, but would enhance the project on the success of vertical farming. So he's looking to things like marinas and high-end housing and restaurants and everything else as part of the complex to be able to carry the load of the intensification of agriculture on that site.
So you're saying that in essence there still is some help needed. The question is coming in, when will it be able to stand on its own without support from the government, from the taxpayer?
I'll just sort of qualify what I said a little bit there. It's so new, financial people don't yet know. In his case, he has to have enough safe bets in this village in order for him to take high-risk solutions about vertical farming.
So it is still a large risk, is what you're saying?
Because of the unknowns.
And speak right into the mic. Don't be afraid to
put it up there.
It's not a matter of a big risk. I think technically and economically there are enough applications possible today. But it's exactly what you say, that this new supply chain is so very new that all those who are in the current supply chain are a little scared of stepping into the new one. And on the other hand, we are convinced that the current players in this traditional supply chain have to be the players, at least some of them, in the new one as well. And it's a huge step for them, for breeders, for propagators, but even much more for retail business to change a supply chain. So it's not a matter of just cost price or feasibility. It's a paradigm shift that is huge.
Down the end, please. Mr. Shimamura. Thank you.
じゃあ、ジャパニーズ、ラングエッジ。
Speak Japanese. We'll make it work.
こんにちは。
こんにちは。
私の会社の例では今まで政府からの補助金は入ってません。で、久保田先生のプレゼンテーションの中で出てきた数字は 全部プロパーでお金は自分で全部出したことを前提に組んでます。なので経済性は我々の仕組みでは成り立つというふうに考えています。
What he said was, according to his example or the experience, in the past there was no subsidies, so there was no subsidizing from the government. So that the economics that was presenting in the presentation was basically what he said, proper value, not including government support at all.
決定的に違うのはおそらくエンドユーザーの価格を設定してそれを逆算してあらゆるテクノロジーをそこに集めてなんとか実現するという発想でやってます。コストを積み上げて提供するという考えではおそらく無理だろうというふうに思ってます。
So his approach is basically determine the target price of the target products and then go backward to find out what is the acceptable cost rather than building something, accumulate the cost and figure out what's the cost and what is the product that can afford. So it's totally different. So to achieve that target cost, he has to put all kinds of available technologies to make it happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other?
Well, there's one thing that I noticed today, there's no life cycle analysis. So the assumption of whether it's ecologically or even environmentally sustainable, I still have doubts. I don't know for sure because manufacturing LED is not totally environmentally sustainable. We need to take the consideration of how the materials are used in the system as a life cycle form to know that. And on top of that, we're talking about multi-objective optimization. You want to achieve 3 objectives at the same time. That's not easy, okay? That requires a real good analysis. So the assumption that it's environmentally sound, it's ecologically sound, I assume that some people would agree, but without a good life cycle analysis, it's very hard to convince real true scientists that it's achievable yet. And adding economic sustainability is another dimension that we need to optimize. That's difficult.
I just think from an architectural standpoint, it's a little easier than I thought to integrate these into to buildings. When we were designing the project I was working on, there was a lot of concern about the cost of operating in this facility, not so much the cost of building the facility. And hearing some of the conversations today, I wasn't aware of some of these advanced technologies that are out there. I think there's a real possibility that this has got a very short time before it can start to take off and really become economically viable in cities. Because I think as we reduce the cost of the energy and the light to grow medium, I think there's opportunities to improve this.
I would just respond by that. That's pretty much a broad blanket statement that it could occur for cities. But wouldn't it really depend on the city and the market that's available in that city? That we have to keep that in mind. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I speak from a perspective of being in American cities, but I have no idea what people in Japanese cultures or Chinese cultures expect from their produce on a daily basis.
Right.
So I think it is a broad statement.
Perhaps I can also say something from the aerospace perspective. If it's economical feasible or not, I don't know. Sure, we have to ask us the question, but usually I'm telling my students, when we're going to Moon and Mars, we're trying to be independent there. We have our closed habitats. But actually, we are already living on a planet. We just have the luck that we have a supporting biosphere that gives us the possibility to do agriculture on field. But actually, I think we also have to make ourselves, our humanity, to be independent from this planet. We have to be independent from this nature, leave it alone so that it can get strength again, and so that we are like, independency. This is, I think, the statement I would like to say. So there is a need, not only economical.
But aren't we looking at this issue from a real Western perspective and say that we can choose between green and dark green and little green salad, and we are willing to pay, obviously, $4.99 for a pound of tomatoes? But there are parts in the world that are really in danger. There is a real sense of urgency. This is not something that is nice to have. This is a must-have within the next 10 years, and it's a matter of surviving within the next decades. So it's not a question, are we going to accept a high-tech way of farming? There is no choice. If we are going to do it without, we will need so much new arable land under suboptimal conditions where pests and diseases will rule and that we have to control with chemicals, and that's not the way that we want to go. So I would like to emphasize the sense of urgency that we are talking about here.
I think that's a good point. We want to go out to the audience, but I have a comment to add to that, and maybe it's a turning point here. We have to recognize that we are not talking about staple crops here, I don't believe. If we are, then please inform me about that. I think we're talking about specialty crops, nutrition, adding supplement to our diets, at least so far today. If we're going to go that other direction, could we make wheat, corn, rice, potatoes? And I think you agreed before that's not going to be the case. That will feed the masses of people. I think we're talking quality of life differences here right now. Just my thought. Yes, sir.
Yes. This is directed towards the whole panel. Sitting back and in summary for me, when hearing everyone speak and presenting, I listened to a lot of the challenges being presented as to technological and how light is distributed to the leaves and how to get optimum yields. But one of my concerns is that being that this is a really new technology, it hasn't really moved over into the public sectors, I think, in a way where a lot of these new paradigm shifts in technology and vertical farming, the people are really lacking in awareness as to how these technologies will affect their lives in the years to come. And my question is to the panel, how do you foresee yourselves in really being forerunners and leaders in making the public aware of these advantages in vertical farming?
Do you want to direct that to any one person, or?
Not really, it's for the whole panel, if anyone really had anything to say.
You're all on the list there. As they cautiously pass down the microphone.
I'll take that one. Actually, as part of the project we're working on at Loyola, it's part of their mission to educate students and teach them how this will improve their lifestyle in the future. And I think it's really incumbent upon the universities to really start to take this on as something that's important to teach everyone, because we've all grown up in a different society, but they're going to have to inherit a different society that they're going to have to adapt to. And I think, for me, I'm very interested in being involved with institutions to try to promote this to the larger public, rather than having a very small group of people that are very fascinated in this, working on this. I'd rather have the masses involved.
So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to inject an idea I wanted to get in the conversation anyway. So, one of the things that interests me about this is the potential for controlled environment agriculture to be a small business, right? So to be something that an entrepreneur can start up, like now you would run a convenience store or something like that. In an urban neighborhood, you can have your vertical farm. And so I think that getting that idea out there is something that could help promote it within the community, because I think there's a cultural, economic, not only are there food deserts in the middle of these urban centers, but there's also employment deserts, so to speak. And people talk a lot about self-sufficiency and entrepreneurism, and we tend to link entrepreneurism with these super high-tech undertakings. But entrepreneurism is a guy with a hot dog stand, and if if the kinds of things we're talking about here can really be scaled down to that micro level, then I think we've got a good message to sell.
Okay, I just, something that's occurred to me, that's happened to me very recently. This week I was talking to the people in the the Division of Continuing Education at the University of Vermont. And they have begun to question the classic paradigm of the modern university education, which is $50,000 a year and $250,000 worth of debt to start out with. And so what they're doing in continuing education is teaching online courses and not charging that, whatever it is, $1,000 a credit, but simply giving students who fulfill the requirements a certificate for whatever the course happens to be. And they have something in their resume, but a lot of people are looking for knowledge, are looking for skills. And so it's changing. And one of the most interesting things they found is the fastest growing interest area they have at continuing ed in Vermont at the university is agriculture. Bingo. It's just blowing them away. Everything they're offering is being gobbled up.
All right. My question is similar to the other gentleman. We're sitting here today as sort of a scientific, practical bunch of people. But I grow, distribute, and market my product, and sometimes it's a psychological thing. Right now we're in the technology thing that everybody's willing to accept the newest smartphone and things of that nature. But in agriculture, I have some people that walk away, whether I'm at a farmer's market or I'm at a Know the Farmer Day at a Wegmans store. If I'm not growing in mineral soil, they just flat walk away. Sometimes I have a chance to plead my case and so forth. With the vertical farming, this is sort of the question, whether it be international or local. How are you perceiving people's psychological acceptance of vertical farming? Because it's even taking it a few more steps than I do currently in a greenhouse with hydroponics.
I remember the discussions that we had in the early 80s when we switched in Holland from soil to rock wool to hydroponics. And people were sure that they could taste the difference from tomatoes from one and the other. And it just happened. This is a very professional way of horticulture. You can do this small size, you can this large scale, but it's professional horticulture. And from a plant's perspective, they always have been eating red and blue light, also outside. So we are not manipulating nature. It's the first time in horticulture that we are not trying to copy nature, but that we are trying to make plants really happy. And that means that we are skipping things, but for plants, they act like hell. They don't care. And another thing is that we have been answering 20,000 emails last 2 years. We had over 3,000 visitors. And I've been doing over 200 interviews. And one question comes back time after time. People ask, don't you think that there are people who have problems with vertical farming? And my question is, do you have problems with it? No, not me, but I can imagine. So I haven't met those people yet. We are just imagining that they exist.
It's funny, I wrote you an email 2 years ago. You haven't replied to that. Okay.
I remember that one.
Well, I wanted to add actually something to the question before that. You were talking about the public engagement, pretty much, right? Let me just alter that a little bit to scientific engagement. And I just want to throw out an idea to the audience here. I talked to Dixon, I think last year in July, and we also talked about this idea. We should do something like, and this is a first start, this is really good, but we should get it to the more international level, I know for sure that for example, in Germany, there are at least 4 universities that are also going into vertical farming, and we are in contact with those people. First vertical farm is now planning to be established in Dresden, most likely. Yes. Well, so what I'm supposing, what I want to propose here to the audience is let's go for an international conference that we could like organize every year, the first international conference on vertical farming, and gather together industry, scientific people, students. There's so many master theses that were done on vertical farming, and they all have posters that they would like to share with the public or with the scientific community. So I think that's what I really would like to propose, and also perhaps ask the audience what they think about that, or here.
I think it's a great idea.
I think we should feed people at the conference.
Maybe, Jean, you should mention the first ACES meeting in 1993. I think it's time for another of those.
Or to continue on with evaluating crop production systems and control
continuing on
them.
in an integrated form
Ah.
of meeting. Not see, traditionally we only go to automation people only go to automation meetings. Crops people they go to crops meetings. Environmental control people they go to control meetings, and system people they go to talk to themselves. So, but
nobody wants to listen,
1993 we decided to serve the greenhouse industry. At that point, we were working with greenhouse industry. The best way to do is to have a meeting that covers all the aspects, and then put them all in the same room. We had 175 people, 1/3 from industry, 1/3 from extension people, 1/3 from research, and then 1/3 talking about, 1/4 talking about automation, 1/4 talking. So many people came to me, oh, I used to go to crop meeting. I only read papers and names of automation people and environment people. But this meeting actually put them all together in the same room to talk about that all the components need to go into the right place to work together to make this happen. So I agree with the meeting, and we should do it at least in that form, instead of just going to talk to the people you already know. Okay.
Yeah. To some extent, this venue has allowed us to meet and network with a lot of new people as well, but we could expand that. That's absolutely.
So we have one housekeeping question from the internet. Tomorrow's meeting will not be taped and available to the general public, but the purpose will be to produce a report that hopefully will be. We'll take one question from our organizer, Dr. Sanjeev. I have one follow-up question, and then we want to make a slight presentation right at the end before everybody leaves. Sanjeev.
Okay, so Bertrand is one of the few people who mentioned anything about
Sanjeev,
developing.
we can't hear you.
There was a microphone I could use.
Here you go. You started this. You should get a microphone.
Absolutely. I couldn't see. I thought they were up there. So Gertan was the only person who really explicitly mentioned the developing countries. I think that it's a topic worth just spending a little bit of time on, because rather than the $4.99 per pound thing that you would see at the Whole Foods in Washington, it would probably be 49 cents. So we're talking about yet another order of magnitude kind of reduction in cost. So there is one kind of model where, okay, the high-tech, super high investment has to continue, and it has to become even cheaper before it will make sense for the developing countries. But when I went to talk to USAID about this, they had a completely different take. They said, if you could think about something that is not so high-tech, that would not require so much investment, it might become an entrepreneurial opportunity for people in places like Ghana. You know, what you have is these people that are just born to be entrepreneurs. They're carrying little things around of water and selling water. Okay, that's how they make their living. Okay, they're going around with some sort of a skin, an animal skin, and inside there's water. So they've got a little bit of investment, and they're trying to make money that way. And could you not think about something that is not so high-tech, okay, that would still get these high yields or something else like that, that might be an access into the developing world where you could start to sort of make an impact there. So I just wonder, anybody has any thoughts in that regard I mean, is it going to now take another order of magnitude before we impact that world, or is there something else, a shift in paradigm, a different problem, a different kind of take at it before we could impact that world?
I think that at least our approach would be, it's high tech and you can't change that. But we have made calculations for developing countries as well. And a few weeks ago there was an interview that was published for the United Nations. And we made a calculation. If we would offer those people in these developing countries 40 grams of fresh vegetables and fruits every day, but with a high content of nutrients. And if you would assume that the solar plant would be a gift from United Nations, FAO, who cares? But the whole plant production would be run on real costs. It would cost $13 a year to feed one human being with 40 grams high-level nutrients. That's not unaffordable. That's a matter of political willingness to do so. Yeah. There is no reason not to do it.
Yeah, I like that idea where it's going, but the question is, for that thing to happen, there's an infrastructure cost, which you're assuming somebody pays. If it's in a $100 million category to feed 1,000 people,
but that's not the case.
Table. So what are those numbers?
The numbers would be that, well, it might be $100 million. Let's see, it's $1,000 a person as an investment. But I've been in Washington last days, and you have so many buildings that don't make any sense. And some people had the guts to build them once. So I can't believe that money is the reason that it is not going to happen. And the cheaper these buildings will be, the more happy we would be.
He's getting personal now. We got to watch this thing.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
We have a question here. Go ahead.
Yep, one question from the audience. Common to all vertical farms and year-round greenhouses is electrical energy use. Is the panel aware of anyone considering co-locating next to a landfill, waste-to-energy facility, or a large wastewater treatment plant? I think the answer is yes.
How do you avoid them?
Yes, it's logical that it could happen or should happen. That's right. Use of resources.
Sure. So I have one final question for the panel. We'll make it very fast. And if Patty, Rodi, and Sanjeev could both come up to the front, we've got a little thank you gift for you both. Real quick, what was the most interesting thing you heard out of which other lecture from one of your colleagues during the day?
Ooh.
You can't be all so in love with your own ideas.
I found myself making a lot of notes around such things as the matter of price, what you can produce for a kilowatt hour. I find that whole information is a very important metric, and it tells us where we have to go and what we need to do.
Yeah, that was exactly what my answer was. I thought it was interesting that we saw from 3 or 4 different sources that it's somewhere between $10 and $20 per kilogram. And I guess I'd like to find out how many calories per dollar that is, but I thought it was interesting.
I thought a lot of the presentations were fascinating, but I was very interested in the idea of this humanizing nature and bringing it into buildings. I mean, we all love plants. There's plants all around us, and there's something about the human being interacting with these plants. And there's the technology is interesting, but the base root of it is there's the joy of the plant that brings us joy. So I think that's the fascinating thing that I'm going to take back to how do I continue to involve that in the architecture I do. So.
Do we have to come up with one? Well, the most interesting thing I think is that we are all talking about the same thing from different angle, using different methods, try to convince people that we are already convinced actually in this audience. That's why we're here. And then for very different purposes. So that opens up a very interesting question of how do we move on, with the conversation. If we just continue this kind of format, we may be still talking to each other in the same way. So should we come up with a better way that we can communicate in a way to achieve what Sanjeev said, the grand challenges? So somehow maybe this kind of meeting, I hate to structure the meeting, but some direction of some leaders to facilitate the discussion may be in order. Thank you.
私、日本から来まして、今回非常に嬉しかったのがですね、自分と同じようなことを考えて同じように研究している人が世界にこんなにたくさんいるのかなと思いまして、これについて非常に感動しました。で、日本の事情で申し上げますと、大きな地震、津波が起こりまして、安全性とかですね、食の安定供給ということに対して非常に強い関心が今示されています。なので今までは土じゃなきゃダメ、太陽じゃなきゃダメと言ってた国民性が今ガラッと変わって、本当に安全なものを食べたい、本当に安定的に作物を手にしたいという人たちが増えてきて、この新しい技術に非常に注目されています。なので、危機の状況、ピンチの時にどういった新しい提案ができるかというのが我々この業界に生きる者の務めだと思ってますので、我々のミッションとして世界中でこの技術を広げていけたらいいなというふうに思いました。
Okay, so the most pleasant experience he had today was the discovery of his people who can share his idea and similar thinking, same vision shared by so many people in the world, in scientist side and also industry side. And then also speaking a little bit more about Japanese situation, because in last year in Japan we had a huge natural disasters, tsunami and earthquake. And that was actually changed people's mind. Before that, people, public people are more concerned about how they are grown. So it has to be soil, it has to be sunlight. But now they are facing the serious food security and food safety. And that big crisis changed, and then as an industry, he wants to lead that direction, maybe with other people in the world, to achieve that goal, change the agriculture, completely paradigm of agriculture.
Thank you very much. I know there are definitely more questions. I think we all want to get on to the reception. Before we do, really quick story. A lot of us that were involved in co-organizing this really wanted to thank Sanjeev for A, having the good fortune to sit next to the right guy at the conference who came up with a grant to fund this. But B, really drawing together a lot of people with very strong opinions, very strong ideas, and clearly a lot of interesting perspective. So I thought we'd do a little research, and we had some spies tell us that Sanjeev loves to cook, he loves photography, and he's a bit of an enophile. So I went about the fool's errand of attempting to find hydroponic wine. So if anybody knows of any, let me know. The closest I could come is the granddaughter of the founder of Grand Marnier actually owns a Chilean winery that is organic. And there will be fun conversation later about biodynamic as well as a different category of wine. So we have a fine La Postel Casa Cabernet for Sanjeev, please. My intel on Patty wasn't quite as good, so by default, she and Sine, who that intel was left to, are going to share a Chardonnay from the same winery. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Excellent. I think Sanjeev wants the microphone now. We're done.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for sharing and spending all the time putting these presentations together. Really, I want to acknowledge these two wonderful people here, Sanay Minnick and Patty Rote, who did an enormous amount of the work that actually had this workshop take place. So let's give them a hand. Okay, so just a little bit of logistics for now is that we hope that you'll join us for some refreshments, and that'll go on for about an hour and a half if you're still willing to stick around. And the quick directions is you go down one floor, down the staircase, and take a right. And that will put you in this very nice art gallery in sort of inside-outside kind of a place. It's very beautiful, and we have the refreshments there. Please use that time to catch up on the questions that didn't get asked right now. We're just trying to stay on time. And oh, actually, there's one person I forgot who's made a lot of this thing happen for the people who are not here today, is Brian Stazel. So Brian Stazel is Brian has been up most of the night driving from Pittsburgh, and then with 2 hours of sleep, been here setting up and here all day making these things happen. So thank you, Brian. This is, I'm hoping that, in fact, somebody does pick up on the baton and run with it for a while. It seems like a wonderful opportunity. It's very gratifying. If this workshop weren't a success, then people would be looking to get out of the door as quickly as they can to avoid the traffic. And it's been good that the people have stuck around. So thank you again.